Good. So welcome everybody. It's July 5th, 2023, and I'm Daniel Foor with Ancestral Medicine with two wonderful guests here, Tiana Dodson and Suler. And this is a 90-minute teaching and guided ritual called Necessity as Mentor and Muse. And I like to offer a prayer before we do things, especially since it'll be a little bit of guided direct practice. So if you would join me in dropping into presence a bit. There's around 300 folks from all around the world here, so it's kind of nice to share a moment together. So let's bring our presence to things. I give acknowledgement to the source of life and death and the holy mystery that lives within and through and around each of us. I give acknowledgement to my ancestors of blood and to the ancestors in the land here in La Subia, in la provincia de Granada, en el sur de España, and Andalusia. I give acknowledgement to the Orisha, to the other powers that support my life. Help me to be a good and grounded and kind teacher. I give thanks to Tiana and to Asia and their people, and may we work well together. I acknowledge the ancestors and those who travel with those here present and those listening in later. May something good and beneficial and helpful from this time meet each person who leans in and help us to be guided by the wisdom of necessity and love and creativity. Thanks. Shay. So again, welcome everybody. Briefly, how our 90 minutes is going to go is I'll say a few things up front, and then each of the three of us will share, do some teaching for around 10 minutes or so. We'll co-weave an experiential practice, and then we'll invite questions and we'll see how it unfolds from there. I'll say briefly that if there's a focusing question from my side, it goes something like, what skills or frameworks can help us to view all of our life as a place to express our values, creativity, and like our soul, what we're here to do, rather than just the little sliver of time where we get to be doing specific things we love in a flow state. Like maybe you have a lot of time doing that, but for most people, that's just a little bit of our time. So how do we expand the creativity in a bigger, more holistic, could say spiritual, inclusive sense? So we'll be revolving around that a little bit together as presenters. I'll say briefly in my founder director at Ancestral Medicine hat for a moment that I'm guiding a course called Creativity in the Sacred that starts, I think, next week. And that's still open to everybody. It's a short course on themes related to what we're doing here. I'll say that the first in-person ancestral healing intensive that I've guided since the pandemic will be in a few weeks in Hamburg in Germany. There's still spaces, you're welcome there. The Ancestral Lineage Healing online course is open for registration, as is the practitioner training, now in our 7th cohort starting in the fall. And finally, I'm guiding a free talk with a few other guests at the end of July on relating with evil and malice is a very different kind of topic, and then a short course on those related topics in August. So those are the upcoming happenings if they have energy for you. And of course, Tiana and Asia have their own wonderful offerings, which I encourage you to check out. So that said, why are we talking about necessity? Why link that with creativity? I was reflecting today and getting ready for the chat about a conversation I had about 20 years ago with a friend and teacher, Serengirl Odegan. It's a Mongolian shaman teacher person who passed. And I was asking her if she was hopeful about where we're headed. And her answer really stuck with me. She was drawing from the Mongolian Gesser epic, and she emphasized the principle of necessity. And her answer was basically like, yes, sure, I'm hopeful, because necessity will drive things. We will do what's needed as it's needed. I'm not sure if that's true, but I appreciate the hopeful spirit of it. And it stuck with me in linking the like the holiness of necessity and just how big of an organizing force that is in our lives. And there's no lack of necessity these days. I was, I read probably too much of the news, but I was struck by the story that yesterday, I think it was the hottest day ever recorded on Earth, and with more of that to come. And I felt in touch with it more since our move last fall to Spain. We don't have air conditioning, but it's not that. It's okay. I've felt aware of how many people on Earth aren't even able to cool down their bodies, and what a privilege it is to be able to do that, and how much harder life is when you're dealing with the intensities of cold or heat, especially when you're trying to do things like have a family or have kids. We have 2 young girls in our home, and their arrival radically increased the amount of necessity in my world as a parent, and is a like profound organizing kind of energy in my life. I think about how many people I know that are also trying to make it work in some sort of healing arts, alternative, holistic something. They're like, I can't do it with the mainstream corporate thing. I'm out. And then it's difficult financially to make it work. And most people almost everybody I know is struggling financially. But then there's this push to look like you got it all together. And maybe you do on some level. It's great if you do. But there's a sense of like, oh, like I'm doing great. I'm so spiritual, but damn, I'm struggling. And then that disconnect in how we navigate it internally is gonna say a lot. Not to mention all the systemic unfairness, injustice, the unmetabolized like racism and sexism and colonialism, and just the mess of inequality in 1,001 forms, and how it just makes life harder for somehow or another almost everybody differently. And we could list the ways. Each of you in your own ways are in touch with whether it's body pain or unexpected tragedy or like difficult people near you in your life. And briefly, what I would say about what seems to help from my own experience, which is all I can draw on, is that how we navigate everyday choices is a fundamental expression of creativity and values and will. How I parent, which is a lot of my day, how I navigate choices around the way I run my business, which I spend more time on than teaching, even though I love the teaching part here, or how I navigate my marriage, how I navigate my relationships, and just my daily life. That I try, and I don't always achieve it, to hold that as also the work in a fundamental way, not just the little slivers of spiritual practice or the little states of flow where I feel more opened up when I'm teaching. That's great. That's like the sweet part. But all the other part is also like on a soul level, if I can bring myself to it, is part of the greater work. So there's that, to try to break down those separations. Even like a choice, our family made a choice to move to Spain in the fall. And that might seem like it's privileged in a sense, but it's also driven by necessity. Raising 2 young girls in the United States, I'm like, I don't think I can do it. And so there's well, our basic life choices are creativity in that sense, is expression of our choice. Say that much. The second thing is that creativity, by whatever name, it's not just a personal thing. And I know that I've received decades of conditioning as a white American guy in extreme individualism. And I'm like bailing water, trying to like get it out of my system and not unconsciously move from that place. But if I'm being creative, this can be in response to others. It can be for others, with others. It doesn't need to make a thing. It doesn't need to be monetized. It doesn't need to be remembered. It doesn't even need to be acknowledged by others. It can be the arising of just like the experience and the flow within relationship. And it doesn't have to be driven by what my needs are. So there's a way in which the intense individuality can work at odds to our desire to access more states of flow and creativity. And so the antidote to that is really to move and create within relationship of all different sorts, human and otherwise. And the final thing I'd say, because I want to turn it over to our guests here and not take too much time, is that it's about I guess the word I would reach for is solidarity with others and with the tremendous catastrophe that's unfolding on the earth right now from human behavior. And not to mention all the human suffering. And it's possible to basically say on a heart level, like, I don't know the details, but I'm not turning away from that. I commit to stay in relationship. My fate is linked with others. I'm not running away. I'm in. Like, how can I help? And I'm in. And from that stance, to basically say, well, make me a useful person, or not useful in that like worker bee capitalist sense, but help me to hold a little bit of it. Let me in. This is our mess, not somebody else's problem. I'm in, and I'm in solidarity with the many beings. And from that place, our ritual, our flow, what we're doing in our day, it becomes a kind of communion. And it doesn't matter if we're personally producing something or being artistic or anything like that. There's a way in which the need, the tremendous defining need, has become our teacher, our mentor. And that's not all bad. So that it's not always what we would choose, but that's, let's expand into that. Let me say that much. Many of you, I imagine, are already living from that awareness. And I'm really excited to hear what Tiana and Asia would bring. And then we'll go from there. So thanks.
Hi, I'm Tiana Dodson. I'm a body liberation facilitator, and I like to begin by naming my identities. I'm fat, I'm queer, I'm biracial. So my father is Black, my mother is Chamorro from the island that we know as Guam in the United States. I'm a parent, I'm neurodivergent, I'm chronically ill, and I'm disabled. And all of these identities inform how I show up in the world. They are there and important to be talking about because they tell you a lot about where, like, I am positioned in the hierarchy of oppressive systems and dominance that we are all subjected to. These systems were created on purpose by people to create lack, to create injustice, to take from some to give to the few. And because that happened, we that were taken from are suffering every day. We are working toward survival, not because we chose to have these identities, not because we make the choices to show up the way we do every day, but simply because a group of folks decided that they had needs that were more important than the needs of others. And so when we talk about necessity as our mentor and our muse, we are also talking about survival. Because one of the biggest pulls for the human body, for the human being, for the human emotion and spirit is to survive. At the very base, at the very foundation, we all want to survive. And even if in our heads, we don't want to survive because we look at the world and we see how fundamentally terrible things are, maybe our heads want to no longer survive. They don't want to be here. But here in our bodies, your body wants to survive every moment of every day, regardless of what you have going on, what you're feeling or thinking or experiencing. Your body continues to draw breath. Your body continues to process the nourishment you give it. Your body continues to pump that heart and move the blood through your limbs. Your body continues to move you in the ways that you need it to help you move. And one of those things that your body is doing for that survival, to continue that survival going on, is helping you to become creative. It is viscerally, through the body, somatically connecting you to your needs. It is sending little messages to your brain and to the different parts of you that you have needs that must be met. You have to go to the toilet. You have to eat food. You have to sleep. You have to rest. Your body is always there trying to survive and forcing you to find resources, forcing you to resource yourself. And so if we can actually be in partnership with that body, be in partnership with our physical vessel, and be able to hear these messages, then we can learn how to use these to give us fuel for creativity. Because when we are forced into marginalized positions, because of our identities, because of how we look, because of how our bodies move or don't move, we still need to survive. We still want to survive. And if we cannot get our needs met because someone else has decided that we don't deserve it, then we have to become creative because we want to survive. And I'm not even talking about thriving. Thriving is something else entirely. That requires radical imagination. So if you can find first how to continue forward through survival, maybe eventually you can find the resources that you need to move toward thriving, because you can give yourself space to imagine what it could look like. And this is one of the most amazing things about the human being, when we're actually able to be in partnership with our bodies, when we can be whole as we have access to, we can start to think about what could be, what I can become, what I can achieve. And we can start to look at the gap between where we are and where we want to be, and start making steps, creating stepstones that get us there. I'm somebody who, like I said, is chronically ill and disabled. And regardless of what my mind wants me to do, my will wants me to do, what my spirit is reaching for, sometimes my body just can't. And what this has required for me to do is first, be okay with the frustration that I feel at this distance between what I want versus what is real. And then I have to accept this is my reality. But that doesn't mean that I cannot do things, that I cannot have what I want, that I cannot get my needs met. I just have to figure out different ways to do it because things are in my way. My body's in my way. Gravity is in my way. And so what I'm doing when I'm in this moment is I am allowing the difficulty to be true, allowing this difficulty to be real, and allowing myself to be frustrated and okay with it at the same time. Because complexity is real and it's okay. So then I try to find the parts that I have real power over. What can I do? What can I do? What am I able to do? What am I capable to do? And how can I get my needs met? What are those stepping stones that I can create? What do I have in my environment? What do I have within my reach? How can I make those things happen? This is survival based skill cultivation. This is creativity in action. And once I can create a system, make myself a makeshift walker, create myself a kind of wheelchair using a desk chair that I just happen to have in the house, so I can get to the toilet and I can be as self-sufficient as possible. Well, guess what? I now have space to find joy. I now have space to find joy, find ease. So sometimes I imagine myself flying while I'm in my roller chair on the way to the toilet, and I push off a little hard and maybe I run into the wall. But for a second there, I am in my body and I am feeling good in spite of the pain, in spite of the struggle, and in spite of any of the blockages that I have. And I'm able to do this because I've given myself space and I've dedicated myself to practice. So, what you got for us, Asia?
Oh, Diana, that was so moving. Thank you for that. I feel like I'm just still steeping in the experience of your words, and it's just such an honor to be here with you all. My name is Asia Suler. My background is as a writer, an herbalist, and earth intuitive. And part of my experience has been marked by dealing with different cycles of chronic illness and chronic pain. And yeah, so much of what you said, Tiana, is really sitting with me right now. And I was excited about this topic in particular because I feel like I have been in the pressure cooker of learning about necessity as Muse in the past year and a half since my daughter was born. So I just became a new mother. And at the same time that I am the sole breadwinner of our family, and at the same time that the experience of being pregnant and giving birth reignited the chronic pain that I had experienced earlier in my life. So I've been in this experience for this past year and a half of being a stay-at-home mom who's also keeping the whole family afloat, who's also having very, very loud and present expressions from my body about what I can handle and what I can't. And you know, one of the things that has helped me a lot in my journey, or an identity that I really resonate with, is one of being a highly sensitive person. So if anyone has ever heard this term before, it was first coined by Dr. Elaine Aron, and it is a term for folks who, I think it's about 20% of the population, who just have a sensitive nervous system, a nervous system that is more sensitive to sensory input than what you might say like the normal or the baseline is. And I would venture a guess that probably a lot of folks listening here today are highly sensitive people. What I found through my work and in this field is that a lot of people who are drawn to, you know, spirituality, alternative healing, just wellness in general, and the ability to hold the bigger picture, tend to be sensitive people who have sensitive nervous systems. And one of the markers of sensitive nervous systems is the tendency to get overwhelmed. And it took me a long time to realize what overwhelm looked like for me. And now I understand it very clearly, because I feel like my days are often marked by overwhelm, by too much happening at once, and having to meet the reality that necessity is what drives my life at this point. And so I think before I became a mother, I viewed creativity as kind of this like open field. And especially when I would go through cycles of chronic pain or illness, I would sort of feel like as if I was experiencing this contraction of my creativity. Like I was in this phase where I was being limited. And if I could only get to the other side, then I would be able to open back up again to the, creative life force that I felt to be my birthright. And, now really being in this like overlapping experience of necessity really being my muse, which I love that terminology, I've really come to see things differently. And this idea that contraction is actually where the expansion comes from. And this first landed for me when I was learning about birth before I gave birth to my daughter. And the terminology that we often use for, sort of the waves that one experiences in birth that lead to an actual birth is contractions, right? But what's actually happening when we experience a contraction is the expansion, like this dilating open in order to deliver this child into the world. And that really struck me when I learned that. And I think that there is that metaphor can apply in so many ways in our day-to-day lives, that the very thing that feels like the thing that's hemming us in, that's taking away our choices, that is contracting us, our abilities, our time, that is the very thing that is actually helping us to deliver new creative potential into this world. And so I remember learning about this concept in psychology of creative constraints, which is so much of what we're talking about now. But basically, it's this idea that has been, sort of shown in all these different tests and studies, that when people have constraints, so when there's constraints on time, for example, maybe you only have 10 minutes to write something, or constraints on materials, you only have 2 colors to paint with, that actually tends to make people more creative, that we create better under constraints, which is it's a paradox, but it's one of those beautiful paradoxes, I think, that makes us human. And so to me now, seeing the constraints that I have on my time, my ability, what I literally have the capacity for in my nervous system, it's like most days by the end of the day, like I'm just done, like I may not have the space to like, now I'm gonna meditate or write poetry or whatever. It's like, I did the work that I had for the day. My daughter is bathed, she's in bed, and my nervous system is just like kaput. And actually embracing that the distillation of my time and my abilities right now. And that's what it feels like to me. It's like when you are in this pressure cooker, or when you are in a time of contraction, it is a distillation, right? It's like the gin of your experience. And that can be really potent. You can realize that, oh, what I thought I needed before, which was like, I need like a 10-day retreat to think about life, and like lay on my back and stare at the clouds. Like, that's amazing. I would go for that if I was offered that now. But I realize now I actually don't need that in the way that I thought I did. Sometimes just 15 minutes of that distilled shot of time is enough now to help me reconnect in the way that I need to be a resource to continue to create, to continue to move through my life, to show up here. And that's a gift, to be shown that actually there's less than that. We need less than we think, because we are potent enough to meet this moment. And in some ways, I really view this whole experience of being here on Earth as a giant experiment, and our spirits deciding to try on creative constraints. Like, that's interesting, like let's go to this place where we're in a body and in this physical reality where there's like very real gyres of like limitations and and oppression and constriction and inability. Like, let's experience that. Like, let's try that on. And it has helped me, this viewpoint, especially when I'm going through cycles where my life feels very, very constricted, or when I'm dealing with chronic pain or illness, to realize that from my perspective, uh, my spirit was really interested in this experience of what would it be like to have a constraint. Like, let's see how creative I can get with that. And so it helps me to remember that there is this wiser, wider part of me that came here to experience the reality of creative constraint, that loves the earth for being this place of creative constraint that it is, and that this was, from my perspective, like a choice that I made in order to learn how to be even more creative. Like, it's one thing to create if you have endless amounts of time and space, right? It's another thing to create when you don't. And that's potent. That is powerful. And so for me, that is something that I return to in those moments. And when I look back on my life, I often can see that some of the most potently creative times for my spirit, like the times when my spirit transformed the most, and even if I wasn't putting out much into the world, the creative expansion that was me stepping into the fullness of myself, it always comes about in these times where there is a pressure cooker, where there is those constraints, where I am deeply in this apprenticeship of the necessity as mentor and muse. And so when I'm going through a cycle where times feel hard again, I remember that. And I remember that in those moments, I didn't necessarily feel it, right? But I can look back on it now and see it. And so, yeah, it's an honor to be here with you all and to be in this exploration, because I think I loved the story you told at the beginning, Daniel, because this really does feel like we are in a moment where there's more that is necessary than maybe ever before in our lives or in our lifetimes. And there's the possibility that that could be exciting. So thank you all.
Thanks, Asia. Thanks, Tiana. Yeah. In a sense, we don't need to always know what to do with our lives. In some ways, the earth will be like, "Oh no, there's plenty to do. Just come get involved. You don't even have to know." What I want to do in this moment is shift our attention into embodied practice, so that what we're speaking of has a chance to really land and percolate and meet you, those here live or listening later, wherever you're at, because that's the important part. So you're being met personally and finding something of benefit. And so we'll take 15, possibly 20 minutes, something like that, with me, Tiana, and Asia guiding a thing. If you can, gift yourself the 15 minutes to be held a little and to be in your own space and attention. We'll talk you through it. It's nothing so dramatic, but a time for listening and attunement. So I'll start, and then we'll weave together. If you would, start by bringing your attention to your body, perhaps to your breath, but whatever helps you to be rooted in your belly, your heart, your feet, and the earth beneath you. So take a minute to inhabit your own space. And while that's happening, invite more consciously present at least one connection to the sacred, however that is for you. Your supportive ancestors, guides, deities, God directly, the earth, love, however it is, just resource a little in the aspects of the sacred that you already know and feel good about. And from there, hold intent that your personal space be cleansed and cleared from any negativity, any interference, anything you don't need to be carrying with you at this time. And finally, invite a gentle layer of protection and containment around your space so that only what is supportive for your life in this practice is welcome in at this time. From that place of being rooted in your body and connected, clear, protected, I'd like to invite you to try to just notice without any judgment or story about it, to just start to notice your life as it is. Notice your body and how your body might or might not be in pain, might or might not be the way you might like it to be. Notice your messy home or your apartment or wherever you might live if you have a place to live. Might notice your finances, however imperfect all that is. You notice you complicated, messy, beautiful, painful relationships. Notice your own unfinished projects or stuff you are excited to work on, your affairs, the things that you give attention to. You notice you know the self-improvement project, the patterns you've healed and the ones you haven't. So all these the goals, the things you're working on, however they are, notice them just how they are today, not your idea of how they might turn out. Notice the places where maybe there are places where you haven't forgiven yourself, where you feel conflicted internally about something old or something big or something hard to resolve. Let that just be the shape that it is also. So just noticing your life as it is for a moment. And in that noticing, allow space also for the people who are uplifting for you, human and otherwise. Maybe they're here on the earth or otherwise. Just notice the sweetness and the relationships that nourish you as well. Let that be part of your noticing. And in this noticing, from a stance of really choosing to not do anything at all, but just notice, see if you can gently try on the view that these are your ingredients. This is the palette. These are the inputs. These are the conditions of your life as they are. They might not be the life you would order, but it is the life you're having. And see if you can just like sit as a like an artist in your studio. And these are this is what you got to work with. And just be with that for a moment. And from that place of just resting with your life as it is, there's one invitation I want to extend before passing it to Tiana, which is to just notice so gently the gap. So there's almost always a gap between your life as it is and the life you long for. Even if it's just like, I wish my house was clean, or I wish, whatever, the little things and the big things, and the life that, your story about your life and how it was going to be when you came to Earth. And without going way into that gap, see if you can just invite a little drop of real kindness and self-acceptance and self-forgiveness for that gap between your life as it is and the life you might wish you were having right now. And just rest in that.
Okay. We're resting in kindness. And I want to ask you, how are you doing? How is that feeling for you? Where are you feeling that in your body? And we're just going to notice that. We don't have to do anything with it. We don't have to judge it. We don't have to pick it apart. We just want to see where it is. We just want to gently observe it. What is the feeling? Where is it sitting? Is this feeling familiar? Is this feeling new? We're just looking at it. We're just seeing it. You don't have to touch it. Is this feeling making you feel like you need to do something? Is it making you feel like you want to push it away? Squeeze it, swallow it down, ignore it, look away from it? We're just observing. You don't have to do that right now. It's okay. You don't have to do this action. You can rest. You can observe. We're just going to keep breathing. And we're going to know that our bodies are here and they are real. And that it's okay to feel sometimes. I want to ask you now, how are you doing? How are you feeling? Is there a change? And if there is, let's just look at it. Let's just observe it. We're going to try to return some of that kindness, or just a little kindness over it. And just keep breathing and being.
So, in this space of just being present with that sense of self compassion and kindness coming through, I invite you now to visualize those ingredients or that palette that you visited in the beginning of this practice and this exercise. Maybe you'll see a table with the ingredients of a meal, a bowl full of stones, a meadow of wildflowers. The visualization will be unique to you, but as you gaze at this array of ingredients, perhaps your body, your home, your relationships, your projects, notice if there's anything here that you don't need to pick up again. That for now, you can just let that ingredient stay on the table, in the bowl, in the meadow. Noticing in your body how it feels to give yourself permission to only pick back up what you want to in this moment. And for now, you can imagine that the rest of these ingredients, they're being held for you. Calling in anyone or anything to come hold you as you hold what you have the capacity to right now. Feeling yourself be held as you hold all the things that you do. Knowing that what you're holding right now is enough. It's enough. And in this moment, just allowing this pervasive sense of compassion for yourself to flow through. Noticing what can happen when you allow the softness of self-forgiveness to be there. When you can acknowledge yourself and your strength for all that you are holding, for all that you are. There is a Taoist saying that I've always loved And the saying goes something like this: acceptance leads to gratitude, and gratitude leads to grace. And that is always what our hearts are seeking and opening and orienting towards and wanting in life is grace. And the way that we allow that grace to stream in is simply to let ourselves be in this moment of acceptance. And the most powerful acceptance there is the acceptance of oneself. So allowing now this stream of grace, this buoying force, this supportive force, this powerful force of grace to start to be present, to expand, to be in the room with you, just by settling now in this moment of profound self-acceptance.
Take just another moment or so in the space of practice. And there's two final invitations. One is to just notice wherever you're at, the hundreds of folks here in this particular practice. But beyond that, like so many other beings, just also resting in presence, whether they're moving or still, being themselves, orienting toward what is good and kind. And see if you can rest and also notice your inherent connectedness at the same time. And finally, just take a wide open moment of listening. In case there's any particular kind of guidance or thing that's important for you to bring back from the space of practice. And staying with that as you're moved to, we'll go ahead and shift attention out of the space of practice per se, unless you want to hang out there. It's good etiquette to thank the powers supporting you. And it's helpful if there's something specific you should recall that you were shown to make a note of that so you actually remember it. I want to open it up for shares, questions. If you have questions for one of us more than another, it's welcome to direct it in that way. I would ask if you share that you say real briefly where you're calling in from, and then in light of it being a larger group, just go to the heart of what you want to say, and be lean in that way with time. And I won't necessarily always follow the order of folks that raise a hand, but I might. And we might, the three of us might say some other things as well. But for now, let's open it up a little. Evelyn?
Hi, thank you for today. And Tiana, it made me cry, and Asia, on the beginning of your journey, mine are really grown, my four. I too am disabled. I had an IUD stuck in my mouth of my womb, and it damaged my parasympathetic nerve, showing me what happens when the grounding that I so counted on, having been a birth doula and an embodied practitioner, how it would be to be without it. I'm also neurodiverse. I'm severely dyslexic, which has become my greatest power because I don't think linear. So I was able to pull in and work with Bonnie Bainbridge Cohen, and also the work here, Daniel, and with IFS and polyvagal theory and all of the stuff right now I'm studying also with Gabor Mate. What I wanted to say is that I have noticed one of the things of my job is a lot of healers come to me here in Berlin. I'm in Berlin, I work with the LGBTQ community here. And a lot of healers come to me that are floating because they have opened up some of the pathways with drugs. And actually, Sobonfu Sume is one of my greatest teachers. The medicine that comes from having chronic pain, connecting me to the witch burnings. I am literally being burned on the stake for the last 8 years. It stops at the top of my leg, and it's connected me to that. But what it does, it keeps me grounded. It stops me from floating off. The pain is my greatest teacher and allows me to be here, embodied in this realm. And I greet it. I don't use drugs. I greet it every morning, every moment. It's 24/7. I understand its teaching. And now I've been able to help a lot of my beautiful trans clients who are contemplating what to do and how to be on their journey. And it's been, I'm so grateful for the pain. It's been the greatest teacher, has been all the other sets of things that have come along. And I'm really grateful for today. And thank you. And it will never stop. This is our hero's journey, as Joseph Campbell used to say. This is it. This is where the eternal is. So thank you very much. That's what I wanted to share.
You have that. Natalia?
I am calling from Oulu, Finland, northern Finland. I moved from South America, Colombia last year here. Thank you for the practice. It really helped me to anchor what you shared at the beginning. My question is based on the practice and help me out. Maybe I missed it during the practice, but I want to build from, I have all the ingredients that I choose from the moment, present, now. How do I move from here? What will be your suggestion? Also incorporating this gap between what I would like to do and the kindness of the present moment. Yeah, if you could like elaborate how to move forward after what you offer in the practice. Thank you.
I could say a thing briefly, and then Tiana and Asia, I'm interested in what you would bring. The only thing I would say there, of course, there's no right way to do that, but I'm thinking of one of my favorite stories, Imagica by Clive Barker. And one of the things I love about it is there are individuals who are waiting for, I think it's like 1,000-year cycle. They're just kind of in their post waiting for a certain day to happen. And it could be that on like a soul level, it's important for you to be still for the next couple lifetimes and not worry about getting anything done. And so I would say make a study of where the movement comes from. I really appreciate in Tiana's guiding is like the moment of like, you don't have to do anything about that. You don't have to act on that. So experiment with inspiration coming and like not needing to pick that flower or catch that fish or do anything. You're like, oh, that was just going to pass by. That plan is not going to happen. So that's the only thing that comes to mind. It's not maybe not a very pragmatic answer, but yeah. Asia or Tiana, anything you want to drop in.
Yeah, something for me that I know I want to take away from this and just kind of continue to walk with is that ability to remember and resource in the way that you feel now. And I don't know exactly how you're feeling, but I know for me moving through that exercise, I felt this sense of freedom in in that realization that I didn't have to pick up everything again, and just that sense of freedom of reconnecting with this essential self. And I think on a really basic level, what we really want is to feel a certain way in our life. And moving through a practice like that shows me that I can feel that. I can access that feeling without having X, Y, or Z figured out or perfect or, reaching that level that I think I want to reach. And so I know for me, like writing down a little bit of how I felt or whatever it is that helps you sort of like inscribe that feeling or that moment. And then it can become a touchstone because I know for myself, like I'm absolutely going to try and pick up all those ingredients again. Like there's just like no doubt in my mind that I'm going to do that, because I've seen that cycle again and again. And so being able to have that touchstone to look back to, like, oh, remember when I felt that free in that moment, and like all I did was this, internal moment of letting go and coming home. And so that is something that I know I'm going to take away with me from this experience.
This is a fantastic question. And what I do is try to use some discernment. So the way I do this is I really tap into the feeling. Does it feel urgent? And if it does, excuse me, and if it feels like I cannot move forward without doing something here, then I will sit for a moment and try to find the thing that is most accessible to me, the smallest, most easeful thing that I can do. And if after sitting with that, I don't feel it, or I'm still having hesitation, or maybe there feels like it's someone else's expectation on me that something has to be done, then I give myself permission to put it down and walk away. And what I find is things sit on my chest or they sit in my belly. And if I'm still feeling that after taking space and time, like literal physical space, then I know that it's something I need to come back to and apply energy into. So I hope that helps for you.
Sure. Thanks. Yukumi, I think it is. Help us to know your name.
Wait,
Oh,
wait,
go ahead. Yeah.
you can
Sorry, I
hear
couldn't-
me? Very
I
good.
can.
Thank you. Quay, greetings, everyone. I'm Nugami Selena. I come from the eastern door of the earth, which is located in the far eastern corner of Canada, a place, Nova Scotia, Canada, which is the land of the Mi'kmaq. So I am a identify as a blended spirit because I am of mixed ancestral lineages. Nova Scotia is the only place in all of Canada that had legalized slavery, and those are my ancestor ones. And when those ancestor ones were brought here, it was the first peoples, the original peoples of this land, who came and offered friendship to those that enslaved that did attempt to escape. Some of them were able to, and they came together and they would marry and have families and live in this very harsh life until the government created a law saying that indigenous peoples and Black peoples were forbidden by law to marry. So there's a whole story of my ancestors that I have, that on both sides, that I have come to learn from and experience life through the eyes of those who came before me, and the hearts, the ancestor ones. So very connected to the ancestors. I am a sensitive as well. I really relate to that terminology of being a sensitive. And recently, in listening to what is being spoken today, I will say to you that recently I had a very powerful personal experience with Creator that keeps staying with me. And the experience was of me sitting and going within and connecting with my heart and asking to be connected in a deeper way. And Creator showed up and said, "Take my hand." And I took Creator's hand, and Creator said to me, "Now step up." And it was a very powerful experience, moment for me, where in that moment I understood and was reminded later by Earth Mother, who's one of my guides, that we do not have to endure or go through or walk through these experiences on our own. We have help. And I had kind of let that slip away in my daily journey that I experienced showing up in the world. I had let that awareness of relying upon the circle of being seen and non-seen that are always here to guide and to help. And in the exercise we were doing today, Mama showed up again, and she, Earth Mama, and she took my hand, letting me know, we're serious about this. Stop trying to do it on your own. We're here to help. Rely on us. Come to us. Let us support you. Let us be there with you each moment. Let us in. And so I'm just, if that is of any blessing to anyone in this moment, that is what my heart is given to speak. So, Walalia from Nogama, thank you all. So,
Thank you, Nukumi. There's a move to say one thing. I'm an initiate in West African Orisha tradition and Ifa priesthood, and when you do that, you end up with a divination pattern or signature that's like your life reading, you could say. There are stories that go with it, and happens to be that for me, one of the deities I'm close with is Eshu, and by initiation, and in one of the stories for my Odu, or the pattern, it's a story of working in the hot sun and all day, like working hard, and then Eshu comes along and like knocks over all your work. It's like, and just undoes it. And the teaching is like, you can work really hard, but if you're not working in alignment, the powers will mess it up and they'll just take it away. And it's really a kind of an upsetting story for me because I have a strong tendency, if I feel stressed, and this is really what I want to convey, is like my go-to is to be like, give it to me, I'll take it on. I'll be the responsible one. Like, I'm going to work hard, I'm going to handle it. And it's, I take it as a spirit saying like, hey, young man, like we see that's your unconscious place, that you're just going to handle it. And so we're just giving you a heads up that you can do that. But when you do that, you're inviting the spirits to come knock it over. And so just saying, oh, okay. So I guess the thing I want to share earlier is connected is we're never going to do enough on the theme of necessity. Like two things are simultaneously true all the way to the bottom. One is like, we're already enough. We don't have to do anything. You don't have to fight to be lovable. We're already enough. You can do no other thing ever again and you're enough. It's enough. Simultaneously, if we're like, oh, I'm gonna like handle it and do all these things, it's never going to be enough in the bigger sense. It's like the level of suffering will not be exhausted. So I think it's okay to name both of those realities and like find a way to dance with them. Yeah. Asian, Tiana, and then I see another participant has a question. It's okay if there's nothing necessarily to. Okay. Pantheon.
Hello, I hope you can hear me.
I can, yeah.
Um, greetings from the Wurundjeri lands of Australia, Melbourne. It's 6:45 a.m. Just wanted to say that I'm grateful for this because what has been coming out a lot has been necessity being a mentor and being a muse for inspiration and creativity and tapping into the heart. Because sometimes when my personal ancestors, like I'm looking in front of me and there's my ancestral altar to my mother, her mother, and their stories, we come from Greece and Mediterranean, Egypt, and Italy. And there's a lot of things that they've gone through. And sure, I could have looked back and been more bitter than I am, but it's always been fascinating for me to culturally put into context in time and space their eras and their suffering, and then the intergenerational traumas that I received. But then as a result, the wisdom, as a result, the calling to be more in my heart, the calling to not repeat the ancestral wounds. And when we're doing the guided visualization and some of the things you were saying, it was really empowering how, yeah, I don't have to add a certain ingredient into the soup. If I know it tastes bitter, I can just leave it out. But alternatively, I could add it because it is bitter and because I know bitter medicine sometimes packs a lot of power and a lot of healing that is good for me. So it was interesting because I found myself in this position where I'm like, I know this is bitter, but maybe I need it. And then not knowing what to do, but deciding to go for it anyway and inviting it to teach me, inviting it to explore things with me. But my question, I suppose, here is because I do tend to burn myself, but I always learn and I'm always grateful and I'm always appreciative on the other end. How do I, in that moment of not knowing how to engage with something that may appear bitter, but knowing it has a lesson for me, it has some wisdom for me, how do I do that in a safe manner? How do I safely engage with something that is got a resonance for me, but I know it's bitter before I even taste it?
Something I just wanted to mention on that topic because I love that you brought in that word bitter. And part of my background, my training is as an herbalist, and bitters is a really important medicine in herbalism. And something I learned in school that really stuck with me was um, that one of the things that different herbalists have found over time is that this like cultural craving that we have for sugar, that sometimes what it is actually that our body needs more bitters. And if you've ever like eaten way too much sugar, which I definitely have, like you'll notice that it starts crossing this line into being slightly bitter if you eat too much of it. And so, this is on a health body perspective, but I love the metaphor of it, this idea that oftentimes what we think is like more and more sweetness, like give me more and more and more of the good stuff in life, and then I'll be healed, and then I'll come back into alignment. When, we're working with someone from this herbal capacity, sometimes what we do is like, okay, what you actually need is bitters. And the cool thing about bitters is you only need a few drops of them. So other types of herbal medicines, like, you may need to take more, that threshold dose is kind of high in order for it to start being effective in our bodies. But bitters, all we need is a few drops on the tongue, and that communicates immediately to our digestive system that we need to, basically amp up and prepare for whatever it is that we're going to digest. And so for me, when I'm working with things in my life that feel bitter, like you named Pantheon, like recognizing that they're medicine, but then also recognizing that that the dosage can be small, and that often that's what works best for me is taking smaller doses when I can, when it's within my control, because sometimes it's not. But when it's within my control, like I consciously want to work with this, I want to visit this hard thing, whatever it is, I consciously will ask that the dosage is small enough for me to handle. And sometimes what that looks like is, asking for additional support in my life, visiting that bitterness in a container that can hold me in visiting that bitterness, because sometimes it can feel really, really big. But that reminder that sometimes even just the small gestures that we make towards visiting or working with that bitterness is enough.
I love that, because that's pretty much my answer as well. Like, we have this tendency culturally, we are taught, if you're going to do a thing, jump in and do the thing. But in fact, when something is very difficult, when it doesn't come naturally, when it just, everything feels hard about it, then we need to really first touch our capacity. Do we have space for this right now? Because there is that complexity between what we want to be doing versus what we actually have space and resource for. And sometimes it is really a question of, can I do this right now? Is this for me right now? Do I have the tools that I need, or do I need to go and find them first? And like I was saying to Natalia earlier, if it still feels urgent, it still feels like you can't let it go, it won't go away, this feeling, this urgency, this need to engage, then just like Asia said, find the small little version that works, that you actually have access to, that is easeful enough, and find the containers where you will be held.
Yeah, beautiful. And some things are bigger than we can metabolize. Sometimes you're looking at a big collective pattern, and you just see one part of a big thing. And so the only thing I'd add is mind the gap between personal scale of thing and collective scale of thing. You're like, oh, look, I'm going to work at transforming this intergenerational, massive bitterness thing on a personal level. Be like, yeah, well, you might take a bite out of it and digest that bite, but that's as good as that outcome can get, because that thing is a bigger thing than you individually. So just mind the scale is all. Yeah. It's good. Caitlin, we'll have a last question and then make a space for each of the presenters if we want to say any final things before we weave out.
Yeah, hi, can you hear me? Yeah, cool. Really quickly, my name's Caitlin. I'm in Seattle, Washington, which is Duwamish land. And I heard this statement from a reputable psychic a couple of days ago that has just kind of been rattling around that I would love to hear your thoughts on. That the healer, that this is a paraphrase, that the healer that's going to hold your hand while you're crying isn't usually the same healer that's going to help you push to your next level or push you to your next level of expansion. Those usually aren't the same person. And I don't know, like, I just feel like I immediately want to like resist that. And I like see it as kind of a Venn diagram. And, but maybe it is helpful to kind of see it in that binary way to kind of sharpen our understanding of either one. So I'd love to hear three healers' perspectives on this kind of topic.
For me, it doesn't resonate so much, but I understand the sense of it, I think. I think you can be really empathic and really kind and spacious, and also in a different moment, give people a supportive kick in the ass and a supportive, like, hey, come on now, like you can do this, or a nudge or whatever it might be. I think it's possible to hold both of those. I think it's important to try. But I understand the sense of it, I think, as well. That's my short take on it. Yeah.
And I'll say that I think that, like, yes, and because like Daniel said, sometimes you can do both at the same, both at different times. Sometimes you have capacity for that, but also sometimes we need different teachers at different seasons. So sometimes we need the medicine of the person that can hold us because they hold us so well. And then when we're ready to stand, well, now we can move to someone else who's a bit stronger, who can support us and help to lift and elevate us. So I think this can be true, but also it doesn't have to be.
Yeah, I think the thing that I'm curious about with that statement is, especially in this country, but in just sort of the Western mindset in general, there's often this sort of emphasis put on pushing, that like pushing is how we get forward, and you need someone or something to kind of push you past your limits, really, in order to evolve. And what I found for myself, and I can only really speak to that, but is that actually what helps me get to that next level is the permission to slow down and to someone there who's going to hold my hand. And I think that I think what Daniel and Tiana is speaking to is so accurate. Like, we're all complex, so we can all like shift in and out of these roles, and we all need different things at different times. And sometimes that means different people, or sometimes that's the same person. What I just wanted to bring attention to is I think that there is sort of this like sort of cultural urgency in general around like the push, and that's how we evolve. And that I would love for there to see more acknowledgement of the kind of magic that happens when our nervous systems are like really met with holding and spaciousness and slowness, and that like really incredible expansions can happen from that place of just being held when you need to be held. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Yeah. Thank you all for that. Let's move toward completion of our time by inviting Asia, Tiana, I'll say a final word just to weave out. So anything from the heart that you feel moved to add, now's a good moment for that. Asia, or would you be open to say anything first? Yeah.
Yeah, I think I just want to express gratitude for like being in this space with all of you, and echoing back what you said, Daniel, about the community aspect of this like movement towards stepping into our true selves, of stepping into healing, of being a part of this wave of healing on this planet. And I can just speak for myself and say that like being on this call and in this experience and just like witnessing all of us really together in this moment of minding the gap, of sort of holding ourselves in this moment of like longing and fragility and care and self-compassion. It has buoyed me in this way to just realize that we are all in this experience together, that there really is no hierarchy when it comes to this very human experience of learning from necessity and letting necessity be our mentor and our muse. So I mostly just want to thank everyone for being here and being in this experience with me, and say that it's been an honor.
I also want to thank everyone for showing up the way you have and being open and having the bravery to be gentle in this space together. And I see that there were 2 questions that were put into the chat, and they both kind of have a similar flavor, which is, how do you hold 2 different things? How do you hold multiple things at the same time? And I just want to say that there's no simple answer to that, unfortunately, but I think that it's very important that we always stay with the idea that it's always both and. It will always be complex. There is no simple solution. There's not really a quick answer that's actually going to get us to the place that we want to go. So sometimes we have to move through the grief and look for the crumbs of joy that we can find along the way. Sometimes we have to be okay with the fact that there are large spaces between what really feels good, while we're dealing with the thing that is in front of us and the bitterness that we're having to metabolize. And all of this is part of the experience. And as long as we stay true to ourselves and our values and the desire to create and make the world better, then I think we can never go wrong. And if you want to join me for more of these conversations, I'm actually putting together an event that is free to attend. It's the In This Body virtual conference, and it'll start the 17th of July. So if you are interested in joining me to hear more stories from people who have taken the necessity and used it as a muse for creativity and mentorship, then feel free to join me for that. And even if you don't, because you don't have capacity or whatever you have going on, thank you so much for showing up here. And thank you for wanting more and to put beauty into the world.
Yeah. And yeah, please do check out the good works of Tiana and Asia. From my side, by way of completion, I'd also like to riff just a little on the questions that were sent in around holding both, as it were. I think it's a good goal to want to be wise and kind and awake, and to actually be a person of presence. And one of the things that that calls for is the cultivation of neutrality, the ability to sit still and not do anything, not react too much, or notice the reactions but not need to do anything about them. And there's a lot of ways to cultivate that, but one of the less obvious things, it's the main thing I want to say, is it means surrendering to things that are outside of our current range at times. We need to expand our range. To find the middle, you got to go to the extremes, to carve out space. And the things that would expand our range are rarely the things we would choose for ourselves. Like I chose it, but parenting's a pain in the ass. It's hard sometimes. And like it's cute and fun and connective and I love it. And sometimes it's just like really hard. For example, but it's expanding my range. Like there's more neutrality. I'm a better person for it. I have less sleep, but my center is more at rest because it's drawn me into places of discomfort. And so we're not always going to be like, oh, great, it's a growth experience. Let me just praise the universe. But sometimes it is an opportunity to really expand the circumference of our capacity so that we end up with a little more neutrality and presence and even compassion at the center of that. So I wish that for everybody, and I'm working on it here myself, and want to appreciate really the undercurrent of kindness from Asia and Tiana, and appreciate all of you for your time and care. And I appreciate those listening in after, and those of differently shaped bodies and consciousnesses who support our lives and the way that we're woven in and an extension of the earth. Thank you to the many powers, and may your creativity and flow arise from actual necessity in a way that helps you to feel grounded in reality and nourished and even happy now and again. So thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time.